Thank you so much for having me here today. As mentioned, my name is Faria Khan, and today I'm going to talk about inhalation toxicology in the era of climatic change. So let me take you all to the time where people were living a lot more simpler life and and people had less interference in the environment. I want you all to take a look at this picture in front of you and identify the threats that humans sitting near the bonfire and enjoying the slaughtered goat could be facing. So the first one could be by inhaling the fire from the bonfire. We call these biomass burning aerosol. The second one is, of course, the closely feasting cub of lion and slowly approaching mammoth that could rampage them and ruin their barbecue party. So the topic of my presentation today is to see what kind of interventions are being caused by humans that is actually changing the composition of the air and increasing the inhalation toxicology. If you would notice in this picture, there are various types of emissions present since the beginning of times. There are plants, trees, vegetations, which are the contributors of, largest contributors of volatile organic aerosol emissions in the atmosphere. Then there is fire, which emits some certain type of aerosol in the air that impacts the downstream quality of air. Then there is mountain, which has certain kind of emissions that are more prevalent in the rain and cloud water. So the bigger question over here today is, if there were various kinds of emissions present in the air since the beginning of times, what has changed due to human interventions in the recent years that has caused increased inhalation toxicology and decrease in the quality of air that we breathe in? So what we are breathing in today is a byproduct of thousands of years of human activities and natural calamities. If you look at the basic element of what was always present in this atmosphere, one at a time, we would notice there is trees, vegetations, earth, fire, wind, and inhalable particulate matter that was generated by our ancestors over thousands of years. So if you take it one element at a time, the whole system is less complex. And scientists nowadays, environmental scientists nowadays, are able to track back these kind of emissions and term them as primary organic aerosol. However, what we breathe in is not as simple as we saw in the previous slide. In the recent years, human intervention has increased other types of emissions into the air that is known as anthropogenic emissions. These are sourced from vehicles, traffic, industries, buildings, and waste chemicals that are emitted into the atmosphere. So these both anthropogenic and natural emissions are also reacting with atmospheric oxidants to produce secondary organic aerosol. These oxidants include sulfate, nitrate radicals, hydroxyl radicals, and could be and their lifetime in the air could be from a couple of years to a couple of weeks to a few hours until they are deposited as a sink in the environmental system. So climatic change nowadays is also not only increasing the types of emissions in the air nowadays, but it's also increasing the number of emissions of these particles in the air. And that is generally affecting human health. So, so when air pollution toxicologists are trying to work on air quality emissions, fortunately, they're only concerned with 25-kilometer radius around the Earth. So this protective layer around the Earth is known as ozone, and it is present in the stratosphere of our environment. So this stratosphere is generally a lot more cooler than the Earth's, a lot more warmer than the Earth's surface. However, over here, I would like to draw your attention to this man holding hammer in his hands and trying to break through this protective layer. So man-made fingerprint is not even found in this protective layer, and scientists are now now finding out that this layer is getting damaged, and the temperature of this layer is also cooling down. This is not a good news. This means that a lot of greenhouse effect gases are now getting entrapped in the surface of the air and causing this climatic change to be more adverse. And the rate of reaction of these of the formation of SOAs in the surface of the Earth is also increasing, which is in turn increasing the absorbance of these secondary organic aerosol in the human lungs. So now let's place everything we have discussed so far into another equation, the human lungs. What we breathe in is a mixture of both anthropogenic and man-made emissions. And amongst all this chaos and chemical reactions are environmental toxicologists like me trying to figure out how the climatic change is impacting the formation of SOA, how air quality is impacting the human lungs. So imagine the fire emission that we saw in the beginning of the time from Stone Age times. So what we breathe in, what the people in the beginning of the time, like in the Stone Age times, were breathing in was not as toxic as what we breathe in during fire or wildfire events. That is because the presence of many anthropogenic emissions, such as from vehicles, that introduces other oxidants into the air, including nitrates. So these nitrates then react with the natural emissions from fire and convert into nitroaromatic components, which in turn affects the human lungs. So these different kind of emissions that are now present in the air are actually contributing towards adverse human health effects. This includes development of lung diseases such as asthma, allergy, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, lung cancer, and other degenerative diseases when we inhale these chemicals in our body. So imagine some of these chemicals that are present in the air, such as plants-based emissions. They used to have antioxidant effects upon inhalation. However, now in the presence of atmospheric oxidants, these natural emissions such as limonene, pinene, and isoprene are having negative health effects because they are converted into more toxic SOA that have that upon persistent inhalation have negative health effects. So in our lab, what we are trying to see is we are trying to work on chemicals of emerging concerns and particulate matter of size equal to and less than 2.5 micron meter in diameter, because these PM2.5 are able to go deep inside the lungs and cause different kind of health effects, such as so the repeated exposure of these PM2.5 is actually also increasing the lung epithelial barrier function. Presumably there could be like different type of chemicals. So maybe nitroaromatics that we are studying. So these could be emitted from both cigarettes and wildfire emissions, and they could go in deeper inside the lungs and cause different kind of responses, such as inflammatory responses, degenerative responses, more susceptibility to bacterial infection, viral infections, development of cancer, asthma, allergy. What we're also trying to do is work on 2D and 3D air-liquid interface and cell cultures grown at air-liquid interface that can give us a better information on the types of toxicity being introduced once we inhale these PM2.5 and secondary organic aerosol in the lungs. So I'm going to draw to the end of my presentation today by showing you this slide. So climatic change is real. Human activities has caused more damage to the environment than we can possibly imagine. Ladies and gentlemen, this is once my beautiful city, Lahore. It is one of the most poisonous air to breathe in. And this is not something that we would want to pass on to our next generation. We need to take drastic actions to go back from here to the picture in the right. This is because a lot of burden of the air pollution toxicology is now being faced by people who are living in low middle income countries who have limited resources or even basic healthcare facilities to counter the effects of air pollution associated health effects. What we need to do is get more sustainable. We need to reduce the use of fossil fuels, and we need to decrease the crop burning and wood clearance. And we also need to get more sustainable. This also means that we need to approach the net carbon zero mission closer than the current goals. Remember, even today, we can choose the quality of water that we take in, but we cannot choose the quality of air that we breathe in. In the end, I would like to acknowledge my PI, Professor Jenna Park, who is even present over here today, my group members, and the funding agencies who is supporting our research. Thank you so much.